Ag PhD full episodes and more are now available on Acres TV, the newest ag platform connecting you to fields of information. Look for us on watchacrestv.com.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk a little about the different root types that there are with weeds and also with crops.
Normally we're talking about this during the Weed of the Week segment because this really goes into, hey, if you want to stop a certain plant or if you want to help another plant thrive, you have to understand that root system, because if you've got a perennial root, for example, that is just a deep taproot, that's a whole different story than something that has rhizomes or stolons.
Yeah, so just as an example, an annual weed, pretty easy to control. But when we get to the perennials, like Darren said, there's milkweed. Well, all it has is just one root that's going down, usually. Dandelions definitely has that. Well, when we compare that to Canada thistle that loves to put out lots of rhizomes all over, what a rhizome really is, it's a below ground root that actually can have another growing point. And so it could have a bunch of these rhizomes going out and each one of them has a growing point. Well, if you come along to do tillage, for example, and you say, oh, I'm going to clean up Canada thistle with tillage. Well, all you do is you cut off those roots down below, and now instead of having one big plant that was spread out, you have a whole bunch of little plants that's each going to start its own thing, and then that's going to put out more rhizomes, so it becomes really problematic.
Well, you do see that on a weed like milkweed, Brian, because as you pull it, it looks like there's just one root, but at the bottom you might notice, hey, it kind of branched off to the side, and yes, you know what, it was trying to shoot up another plant, and as you break that off, that other plant may still come, and that makes it a real challenge.
So rhizomes are roots that are going below ground and can put on additional, or do have additional growing points. Stolons, they're running on top of the soil surface, and they can have additional growing points. Now that's with weeds, and we have to think about, okay, how's the weed going to spread and all that, but I also think about crops, and just it's kind of interesting learning about how roots really grow. Like corn, for example, did you know that when the seed's planted, a couple little roots will come out, the primaries and secondary roots right there, but what we really care about, the main root system of the corn plant, it comes out above the corn seed. It's called the nodal root system.
Well, that is kind of neat, and so planting depth for corn seeds is very important, and this is another thing when you look at whether it's weeds or crops that you're trying to grow, how deep are you going to plant them? One of the big considerations is what type of root system does that have, and how can that root system stay below ground and thrive and be protected and down where it can take in moisture and anchor the plant and so forth.
So when Darren talks about going down in the ground, we also look at plants that have what we would call taproots, like soybeans and especially alfalfa, where it can go way down deep into the ground, and it's basically just one primary root going down. If you compare that to many other crops and weeds that have what we would call fibrous root systems, they'll put a bunch of roots out and have more that are relatively close to the soil surface. So that can have some impact on how we want to fertilize and where we want to place our fertilizer in the soil.
You probably never thought roots would be so interesting. Well, they really are when it comes to growing a good crop or to controlling a tough weed. Well, one of the weeds that we're going to talk about today is our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?